exactly what I wanted to show. All right, so let's get started here and jump into it. The first thing that I want to go through is I'm going to go here to this other tab, and I want to start here for especially for those that are new with Avid Exchange StrongRoom. It's really just showing how to actually log in and access your portal. Now, of course, for every single board user, you're going to have your own credentials. So you're going to have your unique username and password. But the main thing here that I want to focus on is making sure that you're utilizing the correct URL. And the URL that you should be using is going to be Westward360.payableslockbox.com. And so that's going to be the URL there. Once you go there, from here, you could then log in by typing in your username and password. Now, for those that are like, hey, we don't have, a login, that's something that you could get with your administrator like Eric or someone else on the Westward side to really help with the login here. And they could create a username. They could send you an email. That way you could go ahead and register. And then once you register, it would take you directly to your site to then log in. The thing I highly recommend is go ahead and bookmark the site and of course save your credentials just to make it a little bit easier for you when you log in there. Okay. And then from there, once we log in, we're going to get to a screen similar to this. Now, I do want to preface here, this is one of my demo sites. So everything that we see here when it comes to invoice information and data, it's all made up. I wish we could use maybe funnier names, but we didn't. But all the information here is made up. But what's not made up is what the UI, what the system looks like in regards to navigation, and what it's going to look like on your end. All right, so to get started here, I want to focus next on how to approve and review invoices within the system. So I'm going to go here to the top left, and I'm going to click on My Invoices. This is the current screen that we're in. My Invoices is going to be the default. Whenever you log in, it's going to take you directly to that tab that we're looking at now. And here you're going to be able to see the different invoices that are ready to be approved by you. Now, one thing that we're going to touch on in a little bit more detail is the notification that you receive via email whenever you log in, or rather whenever you get an email saying that, hey, you have invoices to approve. We're going to cover that here in a bit. But typically what would happen is you get an email. The email says, hey, you have these invoices to go ahead and approve. Within the email, you should get an email kind of hyperlink. You'll click on that and it's going to take you directly to the login. That way you can log in, and then from there you could approve the invoices. And it's going to take you directly to the My Invoice tab here. All right. So once we're in the My Invoice tab, we're ready to approve invoices. Now, before we get to that, a couple of things that I want to show everyone is here on the left, you have this menu. This menu can collapse if we click on this white button here. And the menu really is here to help you sort and filter invoices. So for example, I only have 2 invoices, so it's very easy to see that, these 2 invoices are the ones that are ready to be approved. But let's say you have a list of, 10 or 15 or 20 invoices. In order for you to better filter what you want to see, you could use the filter column here on the left. So if I want to see overdue invoices or invoices that have been held, I could do that. If within an N number of days, like 7 days, or what's new today, you could go ahead and filter by that as well. Older invoices, you could do the same there. And then from here at the bottom, the main thing that I like to kind of recommend is look at the vendors, because you can easily see that I have 2 invoices, one for Howell's Electric and the other one for Waterboy's pressure washing. And the cool thing here is, let's say you have a list of 10 different vendors, which is going to be maybe 10 different invoices. You could quickly click on the hyperlink for the dollar amount, and it's going to take us directly to that one invoice. You can see how this could be beneficial, especially when you have, 10, 15, 20 invoices at once. again, just makes it easier for you to filter out what you want to see based on the filter criteria. I'm going to go ahead and clear that out. You could also filter by expense GL, and it's going to do the same thing. The dollar amounts are a hyperlink that's going to take you directly to those invoices. So again, this menu is just there to help you filter what you want to see whenever you're starting to approve and review those invoices.
Eris, one quick thing. We just had one comment in the chat saying if there's any way to zoom in a little bit, like on your screen, to just because the typeface is a little bit small. But if it's not, oh, there we go. Perfect.
Is that better?
Thank you.
Excellent. Great. I have this really big monitor here that it's on my top right. So it makes everything look a lot much bigger than what it is. So as we continue through this and we have the same issue, Eric, please stop me and I'll go ahead and zoom in more.
Will do. Thank you.
All right. So what we have here is essentially these two invoices that are ready to be approved. Now, as a board member, what you should be doing here is you should be essentially reviewing each invoice individually and making sure that, hey, this is good to approve and you can go ahead and pay it. What I recommend as I'm looking at these different line items, so each different line item is an invoice. You can see here we have invoice 4790 and invoice 20587. What I like to do is I like to hover. And if you hover just on the invoice number, it's going to give you this pop-up that comes up that shows you just some basic information on the invoice. It tells you the association, the vendor, the status of the invoice, who last approved it. In this example, it was last approved by Aaron. So it just gives you some information at a glance instead of driving into the actual invoice.
One note I'll make just on like the operational side for most board members, if you are currently set up for StrongRoom access, usually that last change where you see change approved by Aaron Consarella, normally what you will see there is your manager's name, because typically the order of operations for many communities is that manager gives that first approval and then it goes to your queue. So normally, just for reference, you will expect to see your manager's name on that section to kind of verify who last saw this invoice and deemed it appropriate to be in your queue for review and approval.
Great call out there. And then from here, what I want to shift into next is driving into the details of said invoice. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to use the first invoice as the example, and I'm going to click on the invoice number. When I click on the invoice number, it's going to take me to the invoice detail page. And this is going to allow me to see the actual invoice image here on the right. So you can see the full image. If you ever want to download the image, you can from here. You just click on the download button here on the top right. But also on the left, it's going to give you some additional header information on that invoice. Essentially everything that's on this invoice when it comes to like, your association name, the vendor, the invoice number, the amount, the dates, is going to reflect here on the left. In addition, you're also going to be able to see the GL or the expense for that invoice. In this case, we have an elevator repair expense for $330. And simply for most occasions, if it's an invoice that looks good and that's ready to be approved, you're giving it the green light. You could just go ahead and click on this green approve button here at the very top left. Now, for situations where you're like, hey, there's a problem with this invoice, maybe I don't want to approve it yet, or maybe I have a question on the invoice and I need to get it back to the manager to have them answer my question, you could go ahead and click on the reject button. Now, the great part here is when you click on that reject button, the system is going to require you to add a comment here at the bottom. That comment is going to go back to your manager and they're going to be able to see your comment based on why you rejected the invoice back to them. For example, it could be, hey, we're not paying this invoice up front. We're only going to pay 50% now and then 50%, down the road when the project is completed, for example. And so that's really the two options that you have when it comes to either approving the invoice or rejecting it. Now, what I also want to note here at the bottom is, let's say you want to go ahead and approve the invoice because you're like, hey, we want to make sure the vendor gets paid. Don't want to have invoices that are just staying there. If they could go ahead and get approved now, you could go ahead and leave a comment in here as well, and then approve the invoice forward if you want to add an extra note there. So that's going to be the note tabs here on the bottom left. What I want to talk through is these different tabs here that we see: payment, history, and vendor info. The first one's going to be the payment tab. The payment tab is going to show you which account this is being paid from. In this case, it's being paid from the operating account. In addition, if this payment is scheduled for a future date, you'll be able to see the actual scheduled payment date here at the bottom. If it doesn't have a scheduled payment date, like this invoice, it's just going to show that it's going to pay on final approval. So once it's approved by you, and then the accounting team verifies funds, the money goes out to the vendor. Next here is going to be history. Now, what I love about the history tab is that it gives you a full audit trail of this invoice. So you can see that this invoice was created about 6 years ago. But you could see all the updates and changes that were made to the invoice. You could see it when it was created, when it was updated, and who previously approved it. Now, if you're like me and you like to drive into some details just to verify some information that was updated on the invoice itself, you'll have access to click on View Full History here. The View Full History option is going to give you a full audit trail of that invoice. Everything from what was updated, who approved it, and what time it was approved. To add an additional layer here, what I like to recommend at times is, let's say you're like, hey, who sent this invoice to us? You know, was it emailed in? You could always, once you click on the View Full History tab, which we have open now, at the very top left, you could click on Origin History. And let's say this invoice was emailed in by the manager, or let's say it was emailed in directly by the vendor. If you click on Origin History, it will actually show you the email that was used to email in the invoice. You could actually see the actual subject, the body. This invoice, for my example, was created manually, so you don't see an actual email. But for yours, majority of them, I would say 99% of them, are going to be emailed in by someone, again, by the vendor or maybe the manager, and you could actually see that information here when needed. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and click on Close here. That's going to be the History tab. Next is going to be the Vendor Info tab. Vendor Info tab just gives us some of the vendor's information, basic information like their name, in addition to the address. But what I really love about the vendor info, and this is going to be very beneficial, this is one thing I recommend if you're taking notes to go ahead and note on your end, is if you scroll all the way to the bottom here, you're going to see this section called Vendor Invoices. This is going to show you any additional invoices that you've previously paid for this vendor. Why is this beneficial? So let's say you have an invoice that is broken into 5 different draws, and you want to see all the other draws that you've paid for the vendor. You would see each individual invoice notated here. I only have one example because I don't have any history in this demo site. But if I did have history on this vendor, you would see additional rows that identify those previously paid invoices. And you could even click on the View button. Once you click on the View button, it's going to pop up that previously paid invoice. Also good to verify maybe electricity use or utility use for invoices that come in on a month-to-month perspective. If you want to just validate and verify, hey, how much electricity, how much water did we use last month compared to this month? Instead of going and doing a whole full search, you could see that, just a couple of clicks away from already approving that invoice. Again, just to preface here, my system does not show any history just because I don't have any for my demo site. but you would, if you have any here, you'll see additional rows showing those prior paid invoices. And again, that's going to be under the vendor info here.
Eris, I will just add a note. I like that feature a lot, and I'm glad you emphasized it. This is particularly helpful in my experience where you have a vendor with whom you work where the payments are fixed. And sometimes we get that question from a board saying, hey, you know what? I saw the janitorial invoice come through. You know, I saw that it was $550. I saw another invoice from them for $550. Can we verify that this wasn't a double payment, or how do we know that that isn't the case? So obviously one way would be to just click through all of those invoices. But when you do that vendor invoice view, the fact that you can see the different invoice numbers can be really helpful. I was able to walk through with a board member this very example and showed them that because they had a concern that there was a double payment or that we had gotten a duplicate invoice. And then when they went into this section, they saw that there were distinct invoice numbers for each of all of those prior expenses for that same dollar amount. So it was just a nice way to kind of trust and verify that the payments being made, you know, if you saw the same invoice number and that was already paid, and now you're reviewing an invoice that has that same invoice number, probably a good indicator that that's a duplicate that snuck through somehow. So it's just a useful tool to get that quick bird's eye view at some of the prior activity that your community has had with that vendor.
Excellent. Thank you, Eric. And that's going to be the vendor info tab here. The last thing I want to show you is going to be here at the very top. I call this the ribbon at the very, very top here. And the ribbon allows you to see some additional information, some of the same information that maybe we saw in some of these tabs, but more at a glance view. If you don't want to drive into these different tabs, like, you know, the vendor name, here's the vendor name again, here's their address. And you could also see that it's currently at, you know, your board status, for example, and also the pay account, which is, again, the operating account. And again, once you verify all information, if the invoice is ready to be approved and paid, you can go ahead and click on the green check mark, approve. All right. And that's how you would review and approve invoices. I'm going to go back to the My Invoice tab here. Another thing, just a quick tip that I want to show you is if you ever want to sort your invoices, maybe by dollar amount, for example, you can always click on the header column here. If I click on it once, it's going to sort it. If I click it again, it's going to either do descending to ascending or ascending to descending. So you can verify that. If you're ever going to pay an invoice, for example, from a other account that's not an operating, you could go ahead and do the same thing. So all of these header items are also, you could organize them based on how you want to. All right. Lastly here, if you want to go ahead and approve invoices and you're like, hey, you know what? Both of these invoices are good to be approved, and you don't want to approve them individually. This is especially beneficial, again, if you have, you know, 10, 20 invoices that you have to approve at once. You could always verify them by looking at the different information on the rows, and then you could click on the select all button here, and then just click on the approve. We call that a batch approval. I would be careful with that. Again, the main goal here is to verify every single invoice that you have, but just a tip there that you have in case you have invoices that are like, hey, we know we could go ahead and approve these, for example. All right. So now that we kind of talked through approvals and how to review invoices, I want to go through and talk through some basic search functionality. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to go to the second tab here, Invoices, and on the drop down, I'm going to click on Invoice Search. There we go.
And Eric, do you mind zooming in a little bit on this one again too?
Absolutely. There we go.
Thank you.
Invoice search is going to allow you to search for invoices based on the criteria that you essentially input. And so a couple tips that I have here is if you want to do just a quick search for invoices that I have to approve today that were just approved to my status, you can click on these different hyperlinks here at the bottom. Pending invoices that you've approved 2 days ago or 1 week ago or 2 weeks ago, you could always see those quick search items here on the left. Now, if you want to do more of a granular search, you could always do that using the different search criteria. For example, let's say I want to go ahead and select the association there. And then on this drop down, I want to go ahead and just search for invoices for one particular vendor. I could go ahead and select the vendor here. From there, you could also do invoices by dollar amount. If you're like, hey, I want to see invoices that are from, $1,000 to $2,000, you go ahead and enter that information. If you know the invoice number, you can do that here as well. Or if you're doing it by account number, especially useful for utilities, you go ahead and enter the account number. One tip that I will give here is, let's say you don't know the full account number, but you know that the account number starts with 341, for example. With any of these searches, if you simply add a asterisk at the beginning, and let's say I do 341, it's going to look for anything that starts with a 341. We call that a wildcard search. And so it's going to look for any account number within your invoices that have that account number 341 or that start with 341, for example. Again, that's called a wildcard search there. At the bottom here, if I also want to do invoices by, date paid, I could do that. I could use my pre-filter ranges, or I could always drive into a specific date by clicking on the calendar item here. And then I'm saying, hey, I want to see all invoices from the 1st of April to today's date, right, the 28th. You go ahead and do that here. Now, one tip that I have that I like to recommend is, let's say you're like, hey, Eris, all I want to see is invoices that are currently pending to be paid. Either they're pending to be approved by me, or maybe they're, within my association, but they just have not been paid. Maybe the manager still has to approve them. You still have to approve them. What you could simply do here, what I recommend, is if you go to the 3rd row, which is going to be status, simply click on pending approval. This pending approval checkbox is going to show you all invoices that are yet to be approved or rather paid for your association. And so if I click on that checkbox and then click on search, I can see here now, it's going to show me, hey, you have currently 12 invoices for a total of $27,576.54. I could see the different statuses of those invoices. So for example, I could see the manager has this invoice 48450 for Texas Lawn Works for this amount. And then at the bottom here, I could see those 2 additional invoices that are in the board status, right? My status, that are ready to be approved by me. This is good, again, for you to see, hey, what do we currently have that has not been paid, that's pending at some point to be approved by someone in order for it to get paid by the vendor. Very beneficial if you are close to a vendor and you get questions from them, you could come here and validate that information. Now, what I want to show you next here is, let's say I want to go ahead and pull a report from all the current invoices that I'm looking at. If I want to go ahead and pull a report, all I have to do here, and you'll have access to do this, is click on the export here at the top left. Once I click on export, it's going to allow you to export a CSV file report, which is essentially just an Excel report of all the invoices, those 12 invoices that we're looking at. You could do a PDF report. You could also say, hey, I want a PDF report and I want to include the invoice images. Just click on that and then click on create export file. And it's going to export a report that's in PDF format. It's going to include all the information for all invoices in addition to the actual invoice images. Something that you'll have access to do whenever you want to pull it. Or if you just like, hey, I want to see everything that was paid for the month of March and pull a report from it, it would work the same way. All you have to do is adjust your search criteria to reflect all invoices that were paid in March, do a search, and then you could do the same thing here and export that into a report. All right. I'm going to go ahead and click on close there. The next item that I want to show you is going to be similar to invoice search. I could also do a payment search. So I'm going to go to the payments tab and then click on payment search on the drop down. Now on my end, again, this is my demo site, so I don't have any actual paid invoices unless we'll end up paying a made up vendor. But what you could do here, similar to the invoice search, is you could identify and see like, hey, instead of seeing the actual invoices, I want to see the payments that have gone out to your vendors. And so you could do, you can select your association there. You could filter by the vendor. Or you could say, hey, I just want to see all invoices that have been paid for all vendors, from this month to date, or last month, or the last 30 or 60 or 90 days by doing one of the quick predefined ranges. And then from there, you click on search, and it's going to give you those different payments that you went ahead and pulled. Perfect. Okay. And that's going to kind of conclude the invoice and payment search portion. What I want to talk through next here is some notification settings that you as a user, as a board member, have access to when receiving notifications from Avid Exchange when it comes to those emails you receive saying, hey, you have invoices ready to be approved. Now, one thing that I would preface here is if you're not having any issues with that, if everything's working as intended, don't make any of these changes unless you want to drive into more detailed changes when it comes to the notification settings. So as a user, what you'll have access to is going to be my profile here at the very top. So every user has this. You click on my profile. And this is going to give you some basic information about your user. If you ever want to change your login information, by the way, you could go ahead and do that here on the left by clicking on change login info. And you could go ahead and change your username. If you need to, you could also change your password if you want to go ahead and change the password for whatever reason. But the other thing that I'd like to mention here is you could go to emails for my invoices. And by default, what you're going to have here is a daily frequency of receiving emails from Avid Exchange saying that you have invoices to approve. But let's say you don't want to receive email notifications on the weekends and you only want to receive them Monday to Friday. You could go ahead and change that frequency by just saying, hey, I want to receive them Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. Don't want to receive anything on Saturday or Sunday when I'm off. And then just click and save those changes. By default, every single user is going to have a daily frequency, which is what we recommend because, again, if you don't approve those invoices, then the vendors don't get paid. And we don't want vendors not getting their money because everyone wants to get their money as quick as possible. But that's one way that you could change those notifications to make it work for your schedule based on your day-to-day. Okay. So last thing that I have on my end that I want to focus on is just a couple of tips, tricks that I recommend. I've been kind of throwing some as we've gone through the different items that I've been presenting here, but I have some additional ones that I want to talk through. The first one is going to be going under invoices and then going to the AP dashboard. I'm a big fan of the AP dashboard, and here's why. The AP dashboard gives you at a glance view of your invoices that are somewhere in the approval stage. But instead of doing a search, it gives you more of a graphic to see where those invoices are at. And here are the two that I recommend looking at just because they give you some good information, data that maybe sometimes you're looking for and you don't want to do a full search. The first one here is going to be under pending approval, and it's going to be by step. So what I'll do here is I'll say, hey, I want to go ahead and select my association. You're only going to have that one option, right? Which is going to be your specific association. In this case, mine is Spring Creek. From there, it's going to show me, hey, for Spring Creek, you have a total of 12 invoices. All of these are hyperlinks. So if I want to click on the hyperlink, it's going to take me directly to all those 12 invoices. But what it's saying here is, hey, you have 12 invoices. Of those 12 invoices, 2 are at your board approval step. And then we have 10 at the manager approval step. And what I like about this is it also organizes it and tells you how long those invoices have been at that approval. For example, because this is a demo site for me, these invoices have been here for years. It's going to say greater than 14 days. So what this is saying is, hey, these 2 invoices at the board step and these 10 invoices at the manager step have been at that status for more than 14 days. Sometimes that could be a red flag depending on the invoice. Again, we want to make sure that invoices are approved. That way they're paid on time. But then if you have any other type of invoices that have been at those approval steps from 7 and 14 days, you'll see them in these columns. And if they've been at those approval steps for less than 7 days, you'll see them in this column here. Again, this is just a good way to, at a glance, view invoices. How long have they been in an approval status? Again, to make sure that your invoices are not only being paid on time, but being approved in an efficient manner. The next item that I like to recommend that board members should be looking at is going to be by vendor here. Now, by vendor, it's going to show us the same information. So again, we have a total of 11 and 1 invoices, so that's 12 total invoices. But what I like about this view is that it breaks it down for you. It says, hey, for AT&T, I have 1 invoice for $127. You know, for DNC contracting, I have an invoice for $310. Especially what's important here when it comes to just reviewing your invoices, if you notice the different column headers, it breaks it down to when they're going to come and be due. So if I had an invoice that was going to be due between 1 and 5 days, then I want to make sure that it's approved by me or others as soon as possible to make sure that that invoice is paid on time to the vendor. Again, you could see 6 to 10 days, 11 to 30 days, due greater than 30 days, and then if you have any overdue invoices, it's going to identify them here on the far right. Again, making it easy for you to see your invoices at a glance and make sure that your vendors are getting paid on time and you're not having or incurring any potential late fees based on those approvals and the time it takes to have those invoices approved. All right. So with that being said, I know I've talked a lot. What I want to do here is kind of break here for any Q&A that we may have.
All right. Renata, you have a question. You might need to unmute. While we're waiting for that, Tracy, I see your hand is up if you had a question too.
I do apologize. I joined late because I did not get the invitation until after 6. Will this be available? Like, is this being recorded? Will I be able to get this?
Yep, it's being recorded. Yeah, so we'll have that emailed out to everyone a little bit later this week, and then it'll be posted on our education section of the website too.
But this accounts payable dashboard, is this for the board? Because I've never seen this in the Westward Avid StrongRoom site.
Yeah, that's a great question. It is for the board. It's actually for all users. And it's going to be under invoices. And then on the drop down, you're going to see the AP dashboard under the invoices tab.
Let me see. So under invoices, okay, invoices and then AP dashboard. Okay. And then like what you were just saying to see.
Two things that I recommend here is you could do by step. And then by step, make sure on the association drop down, just select your association. You're only going to have that one option. So you could really do show all or Spring Creek. Excuse me. And then from here, you could see invoices that have been at that specified approval step for, less than 7 days, 7 to 14 days, or greater than 14 days. And then if you go by vendor here on the left, same thing, make sure to select the association first. You could see the same invoices, but it breaks it down by vendor here on the left. And then also when the invoice is going to come up to be due. So again, just giving you a better at a glance view of invoices that are going to be due here soon, or maybe that are already potentially overdue based on, what you have in that dashboard.
And can't you also see this when you go into invoices?
You can.
Just because this is what I was also what I would have been looking at, because we're new to Westward. So I've been going into invoices, like invoices I approved today, 7 days, last 30 days. Pending invoices I approved, invoices I rejected, invoices I took action on.
Absolutely. That's actually a really good question, because my invoices is going to show you the same information. This just gives you a different type of view. If you're like, hey, I want to just quickly see invoices without sorting them or going through each one individually. I just want to see invoices that are overdue right now. You could go ahead and look at them. And what it's also going to show you is invoices that are maybe not at your approval step. Let's say they're still at the manager step, and you just want to see if there's any just in total that are maybe overdue or are going to be due here soon. This is a better view for that. So essentially almost the same information, just in a different format, a different view.
Okay. And that would be like current, because let me see, paid by vendor. Okay, so when I clicked on paid by vendor, I could see all the ones that we submitted in March and in April.
Correct.
Okay. And then invoices by account number, same thing. Vendor insurance expired. No, that's not what I want. But village, okay. So pretty much basically is what you're saying, if you wanted to see them at a different view. And
correct.
Yeah, that's right.
Mm-hmm.
Do you want to, Anita? I think you're next on the queue there, and then so we'll go to you, and then Aldwin next.
Sure. So I think my management company is new to Westward360, and I have my StrongRoom account, but nothing is on there.
Did you when did you start, Anita, with our services?
Oh boy, I would say in March, I believe.
Okay, you should have. The only thing I could think of there is potentially if they're if the StrongRoom like sequence of setup for the association hasn't been set up yet. It's possible that some of those aren't populating there. I don't believe it's likely the case though, so I might need to go in to see why none are showing up. Is that like when you go into my invoices, there aren't any listed there?
Correct.
Okay, and which community are you at, Anita?
I'm at Celtic Property Management. They're out of Joliet, Illinois.
Okay, but which community within Celtic's old portfolio?
Morris Avenue Condo Association.
Okay, I will take a look at that one and then write you separately just to see if there's anything that needs to be updated settings wise there.
Okay, thank you.
Of course. Aldwin, you had your hand up next.
Yeah, Eric, I do like the site. I mean, it has like more information than we would possibly use, but a lot of good stuff. So my question is, will there be a series of webinars to dig a little deeper into what, how we can utilize the site, and will you be doing one of these once per year as board members change, every year, basically?
Great question, and I like where your head is at. So yes, for that very reason, because I think, our first step was really launching our education program to really get this moving along. But one of the things that has been our next phase is that there are definitely certain trainings that we see a ton of value, either conducting definitely annually, if not multiple times per year. A couple of the examples, for the very reason you mentioned, board turnover. Annual meetings happen, there are elections, sometimes there's vacancies that happen, and then you nominate new board members. So periodically, a lot of you might have board turnover. So for the Strong Room one that we're doing right now, for the Vantica one that we did last month and posted the recording on our website, we will be doing that at least twice annually, usually once in like the springtime and then once in the fall, just to make sure that we're capturing any new board members where there might be turnover, new people to educate, reminders for, existing board members as well. So we will be doing these at least annually, but StrongRoom and Vantica to go over those two systems, since those are the ones that you as a board member work with the most frequently, probably. We're going to be doing those at least twice annually to make sure that we're just on top of reaching as many board members as possible.
Okay, thanks. One more question. On some of the training videos, I did notice that they seem to be maybe outdated or needed to be updated. For instance, how to change passwords. I didn't have exactly the same information that the video was, trying to portray there. So anyway, just a note.
Yeah, that's a good point. I think you're referring to some of the pre-populated embedded videos that
Correct.
exist in the board member and homeowner how-tos in Vantica. Vantica needs to update those because they have had a couple like design updates. So I think like you call out like the password reset one, that needs a quick update. So Vantica should be working on updating those as well, as just some of the visuals of their design on the website have changed.
Okay, thank you very much.
Excellent. And then the N Merrill account, I know you mentioned that Renata had a question that she couldn't contribute. So I just wanted to go to you since you have your hand up so we could either get your question or Renata's question as well.
Yes, hi, I'm Norville Merrill, treasurer at Pine Lake HOA. Hi, Eric. The question is this, and for some reason she's on moderation. I put a comment there. That's why she can't take herself off of mute. I don't know.
Okay, I'm trying to figure out why that is, but I'll take a look at that because I don't have an easy way to fix that that I can see at least.
But the question is, can a reviewer who is not an approver, just a reviewer, access some of the same areas as approvers? For example, can a reviewer add a comment to an invoice?
Great question. So I can answer that, Eric. A reviewer can't add a comment. A reviewer functionality, the way it works on a permission level, you could only review and look at all invoices that have been paid or that are ready to be approved. At the point for that situation, it would be approver, whoever that approver is to go into the invoice, right? Like we did here previously. And then this is a scenario where you would reject the invoice, add a comment, right? Saying, hey, we need to update some of the information or something needs to be changed on it. And then it could be rejected. And then the manager at that point can make the change. Once they make the change, they reapprove it and they reapprove it to your queue with those updates.
Okay.
So in short, the reviewers at least have access to view these things, but they just don't have the same permissions to comment, reject, and leave those things there that an approver might. Correct, Eris?
Correct. Yes.
And that does, I know, and we'll get to Jonathan in a second here too, but that does kind of couple with his question in the chat of only our treasurer has access to StrongRoom for approvals, but the reporting and search looks helpful on the granular level. What's the best practice for board access, and how and when does the data integrate with Vantica? So part of that question, I think in short, John, just to get to that really quick, is that yes, so like best practice wise, if you're a board where multiple board members see value in being able to see a lot of this activity, but don't necessarily need to be set up as reviewers and approvers, we can absolutely set that up for any other board members that you would like. And then similar to the comment from the Hidden Lake folks at Hidden Lake Townhomes, if you are not set up for StrongRoom yet, we can absolutely do that. If you want to send a note to your manager, we will make sure that the accounting team gets those credentials set up to get access or review and approval status for anyone that you would like on there.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Very welcome.
You can raise my hand now.
Okay. And then it looks like we had Tracy again, and then I think we'll be going to Lisa and Jonathan.
I was gonna piggyback, I think, off of Aldwin about the webinars or whatever, because I noticed there's some where they go out to Schaumburg. That's way too far from where I'm located. So do you have like a list of ones that you guys do that we can see, you know, dates and time? Are those like pre-programmed so that you know when you're going to give them, so that we can possibly schedule ourselves?
Yeah, I'm webinar.
Yeah, so
You in the middle of something? Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah, it should be over within 4 minutes. It was 6 to 7.
Sorry about that. So with the webinars, so those will always be able to be remotely accessed and viewed like this, and able to join, and we'll have those recordings. For any of the in-person events, we do kind of, as of right now, just because we don't have, you know, I'd love to be able to do like in the same week a number in different areas of Chicagoland. We typically have a rotation right now. So last night we did one of our, there was a CAI designated community association leader class that we taught in person in partnership with Kovitz, Schifrin, Nesbitt. So that was an in-person one that we did down in Naperville. We're very likely to have others in other areas across our portfolio. So whether you are in somewhere else in the northern suburbs, in the city, in the western suburbs, do be on the lookout for those, especially those in-person events. We send those invites out a lot further ahead of time, just so that you've got plenty of time to kind of plan your schedule accordingly. So do look out for those. We do also publish the dates of those in advance on the education and events portion of our website, which is a little header at the top of the Westward360.com website.
So like for this one, since I came in late, when would I be able to access the recording? Is it just the recording? Is it the video as well?
It's the video recording will be posted on our website likely by Friday this week. And then it looks like we have Jonathan or Lisa next, I think, and then Jonathan, sorry. Oh, Lisa is also a moderated contributor. So Lisa, I can't fix your permission. If you want to ask your question in the chat, I'll be sure to get to that in just a moment. Jonathan?
Sure. Thanks for answering the other one. I might have missed this, but if an invoice is applied to, say, the wrong GL code, are we able to correct that, or do you have to reject it with a note?
The rejection with the note. Great question.
Okay.
Yeah.
Awesome. And then let me see, William.
Hi, this is actually Arlene from Tamarack. I was just asking about the fast tracks. Some of our payments have come with the fast track requests. Can we turn that on and off within the system, or does it have to go through the manager?
For invoices that you receive that are fast tracked to you?
Yeah, some things I need fast track, but some things I don't. So to change the designation of fast track, how is that done?
So what I would recommend at that point, yeah, so I would reject it with the note if it doesn't need to be fast tracked going forward. And by the way, all fast track means, because sometimes we get that a little bit confused. All it means is that it's going to get to your queue and it's going to send you an email instantly. So the way the email notifications work is that this goes by default for all users, not just board members. There's an email that's sent every single morning. It's typically like between 4 or 3 and 6 a.m. showing you that you have invoices to be approved, and it's one email per day. You know, if you have multiple invoices, it's all going to be bundled in that one email. A fast-tracked invoice, all it does is it sends you an individual email notification at that moment saying that an invoice is ready to be approved.
So it doesn't fast track the payment to have it paid sooner as opposed to
It doesn't.
over.
It does not. It just means it's getting to you faster, which in theory should get the payment out faster, right? If it's approved once you receive that email notification.
And there's an additional fee for fast track then, just to basically just to get the email that lets me know when it's there?
No.
Yeah, a good example of like a fast track one, like to Eris's point about like speeding up like the notification to get to you more quickly. One that I've come across that comes in handy is like, let's say there is a capital project for which like the board has just recently given an approval. And let's say that vendor has submitted a pretty pressing like deposit invoice where, hey, we just approved a large, masonry project on our west elevation of the main building. And we need to get like the $10,000 deposit like issued ASAP so that they can start, ordering materials and things of that nature. So something like that, because there might be a higher level of urgency in getting that through the system approved in the board's queue, that would be a good example of something that might get fast tracked to get to you a little bit more quickly rather than like waiting for, if your notifications are set up for only getting a weekly email and we need to get that in front of you more quickly, that might be a good use of that fast track function.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. And then I know we're just about at time. If folks want to hang on for just another minute here, I did want to run through just I answered a number of questions that were posed in the chat, but I find it helpful sometimes to just verbally kind of go over a few of those. But Norvell, I see that you have your hand up again.
I just thought about it because I'm basing this on my actual experience. Why is there no callback feature? If I accidentally approve an invoice, and I had this happen, and it's like, I just want to hit the undo button, and it's not possible to do that. Is that something that could be considered for future? Because you can get it done, but you got to send an email, and AP has to get involved, and then there's a whole process there to have that approval undone, and it's got to be done fairly quickly because you don't want it paid. The situation is that I was a new user, so it was automatically advancing to the next invoice, and boy, if you're not careful with the clicking, you've got an approval you didn't intend. So I just wanted to bring that up, that people need to know if they approve something by mistake. Right now, you've got to do an email and to have it undone and they were timely. They did do it very quickly. But still, it would be easier if there was an undo button.
Yeah, at the moment that's the default right now, just because the way the workflow functions. Now, what I would recommend on that is, sometimes we could go through things pretty fast just because I know I do it personally with everything I do. Move a little bit too fast sometimes. But one thing I would recommend is always driving into the invoice detail. So going into and clicking on the actual invoice number, verifying everything you want to verify, and hopefully webinars like this help you like verify additional information a little bit quicker when you're looking at maybe the vendor address or which account is being paid from. Just to be cautious about not accidentally clicking on the approve button, because once you click on the approve button, it's going to take you to the next invoice. Now, with that being said, and on top of that, what you could also do if you're like, hey, I don't want to approve this invoice yet, I want to go ahead and look at the next invoice in my queue. You could just click on this arrow button here on the top left. So you see how it's like 1 out of 2. If you click on the arrow button, it's going to take you to the next invoice that's ready to be approved by you. So if you're like, hey, I don't want to approve that yet, I will be approving it. I just want to spend more time on it, but I want to approve the next one. That's how you can get to the next one without having to go back to the My Invoice queue and actually physically clicking on the invoice number.
Oh. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Just a few final questions from the chat that I just wanted to make sure were captured with those that are still on. And thanks for bearing with us for a couple extra minutes. But there are just a few that I thought were helpful. John Boyd had asked, if you reject the invoice, does it stay in the active invoices, and then can it be approved if you get the proper response? So yes. So if you do reject an invoice, it's not like the delete function. So if you reject it with those comments and that explains to the manager or the accounting team why that was rejected or what additional information the board needs, once you reject that, that'll still stay in the system. It's not going anywhere, but that will prompt us to take that action, get the additional information needed. And then once we get that to you, then we can get that reapproved and then back in the board's queue. Sometimes if it requires like a new invoice being submitted, maybe the invoice dollar figure had to be adjusted because there was a mistake from the billing department for that vendor. That might be an instance where we see that rejection note and we might need to delete that invoice and then request a new one from that vendor. So we'll do that if that's the case, and we have to get an entirely new invoice uploaded in the system. But if it's just a simple rejection, it's not going anywhere until we kind of resolve whatever that issue was, and then we can approve it. Another one was John had asked, does this feature show the account the expense was charged to on each payment? I did answer that, but yeah, in short, there's a few different areas where you can see that GL code along with the description. I think what Eris is hovering over right there is like really the best view of it to see not only the GL code, but also the descriptor for that GL code along with that memo. So in this case, you're seeing GL code 5610. That's for just general maintenance and repairs. And then now you have that memo that gives you additional specificity that this was for pressure washing. So that's a nice way to be able to see the GL code, the descriptor for that GL code, because we don't expect that you just remember what line 5610 on your budget means. And then the memo notes that kind of give you a little bit of extra detail, especially for like, a general repairs and maintenance line item. Sometimes that's like overly broad. So you want to see a little bit better kind of descriptor where that memo line can be a little bit handy. Another one that was posed was about how long after approval is payment actually made. So typically within 24 to 48 hours of that final approval, that'll be us dispersing that payment. So if that's a check payment after that 24 to 48 hour period, we expect that vendor is probably going to get that payment, give or take a little bit of USPS issues, probably in that next 7 business days or so. That vendor might be set up on ACH depending on their billing preference. So there could be, different timelines depending on their payment preference as well. One question that came up that I just wanted to get the answer from Eris, just because I didn't want to say yes or no without having a for sure answer. But I think Norvell had asked, can I as an approver schedule a payment date?
Good question. You cannot. That would be another rejection. And then having the accounting team or the manager make that change. You could always see the scheduled payment date if there is one. For example, here at the bottom by going to the payment tab and then seeing if there's an actual payment schedule date. In this case, this one doesn't have one, but it makes it apparent if it does. But if you want to schedule one, you could just, in that case, reject, and then of course, add your internal note and then that's going to go back to the manager, accounting team, and they can make the update.
Thank you.
Yeah, John.
Oh, sorry, I was having a hard time figuring out how to turn the microphone on. In our process, I'm the treasurer for our association. So we have the manager does approval, then it comes to me for approval, and then for final approval, it goes to the president. If I was to reject something, would it still go to the president with my rejection so she sees my comments, or is it going to kind of go in limbo until my questions are answered?
It's going to get rejected back to the previous approver, in this case, the manager. The manager makes the update, and then it goes back to you to confirm the update was made. And then once you approve it, it would then go, in this case, to the president.
Okay, then my other question is, the president rejected the invoice. Does that come back to me to put me back in the loop of what's going on, or does it go straight to the manager?
It would go back to you to keep you in the loop.
Okay, and the manager at the
And
same.
the manager, yeah.
Okay.
It will go back to the manager, and then from there it goes back to you, back to the president. That way everyone could see the changes on that audit trail.
Okay, perfect. Thanks.
Thanks, John. John does bring up a good point that's also good to know for folks on the call who are a little bit newer to StrongRoom, or if you're a newer customer and you haven't yet been oriented on some of the options. But John does bring up a good point. There are some custom features on on the number of approvers as well. So it can be up to 2, but if you're a community, especially where you've got a lot of payables, a larger community maybe, and there's a higher cadence, and you want that double level of oversight for both your treasurer and your president to be part of that approval process, you can do that. We've had boards who prefer to just have one single board member be that reviewer and approver. Also fine. It's more generally your preference. And then sometimes we do have boards that just prefer to be, they don't want to be part of the approval process. They're entrusting us to be, more or less handling that on our end, but they do want to be set up for review access. So depending on your level of involvement or non-involvement, there are a few different kind of customizations that we can do to set up, some nuances that are most helpful for your particular community. And then I think we'll close it out with Tracy. You've got another question.
Well, I wanted to go back on what I think Eris was saying when there was a question about if you wanted an invoice to get paid not quite right away, and you can see the date, and he said reject it, put a note in there saying we don't want this paid until such and such date. How long does it take for them to see that? Because we're new to it, but we initially started off having issues with this going back and forth, and the individuals who going back to the Joliet office Celtic, because we were with Celtic as well. And it was like, what was it? Some were being paid by ACH and some were being paid by check. So the ACHs is technically not going out, but they're automatically paid. And while you guys were talking, I was sitting up looking because one is not in there. But then it was like, I wanted one honestly to go at the end, but I didn't know that I could reject it and say, hey, pay this in another week. So how fast does it go back to the individuals that's going to approve it and send it back to me for approval?
It goes instantly. So once you reject it, it goes directly into their queue. Like what Eric was mentioning a little bit ago, it's going to show that invoice was rejected. And then that comment's going to verify the rejection reason. That way they know what to do. Once they make that change, they then reapprove it to you. And then you'll be able to validate that update by reapproving it if you want to go ahead and have it paid.
Okay. Because I see somebody say to approve it later, but if you don't approve it, it's like if you don't touch it. I was waiting a couple days. It kept coming back to me saying you have an invoice. Waiting for approval. Okay.
It will. Yeah. If you're like, hey, you know what? I want to. Today's, what's today? Wednesday, Tuesday.
Tuesday.
So if you're like, hey, I actually don't want to approve this until Friday, you could technically leave it in your queue, but you will receive an email every single morning saying that you have an invoice ready to approve. And then when it comes Friday, you could then go ahead and approve it, and that gets it, to the next stage to get it paid out.
Okay.
Excellent. Thanks, Eris. One final thing that just it reminded me that we didn't touch on, but just as an FYI, just because I do get this question sometimes, when you have certain payables set up on auto pay, they like think like your utilities, so ComEd, People's Gas, Nicor, whatever utility provider you might have. Maybe you have like telecom lines for intercoms. If there are any payables that have been set up for auto pay, those still run through StrongRoom via the approval process. For a couple of reasons. One, for transparency and visibility, even though it's an auto pay and it might say on that invoice that this gets drawn on like the 26th of the month or whatever the case is, and it's still going to go out. We want to make sure that the board sees those and is aware of them. The second is we want invoices to go through StrongRoom because that is a connection between StrongRoom and Vantica. So like those auto pays, if they don't go through StrongRoom, some of those invoices might not link up to the books in Vantica. So the reason we want to still push those through StrongRoom and go through the formal approval process is because that ties into your bookkeeping in Vantica. And then that way the books reflect that payment. Otherwise, like we're not catching that transaction until we're doing final reconciliations next month. It's a bit more manual, and then you're not seeing as much visibility. So do note that we will have auto payments for certain invoices that normally do get set up for auto pay. It's not a mistake if you ever see those come through. As long as there isn't any sort of issue with that, you can approve those, as if you were approving any other invoice. It'll still just be going out on the date that the invoice says that payment is drawn from that vendor. Okay, well, excellent. I appreciate everyone sticking on. For those that were able to eke out a few more minutes, we hope that this was helpful. Again, to the question raised earlier by Aldwin, we'll be doing these more frequently. So do expect if there's still, if you have new questions that arise in future months, we will be doing another session like this in the fall. Do visit the recording if you need to go back to any sort of particular functions that Eris was able to run through. Like I mentioned earlier, we will look at getting that email with the recording and then post it on the website by about Friday this week. So that'll be fairly prompt. We just want a second to, if we've got to edit anything, and just and make sure that we take a look at that before we post that recording. So do keep on the lookout for that. We will have more invites coming up for additional opportunities for education. So do stay on the lookout for those invites. If you have any suggestions or recommendations on topics or other things that would be beneficial for our education committee to know, feel free to write me. I'm always looking for feedback on these to make them better, more effective, different topics so that we're keeping you all interested and engaged. So do feel free to reach out to me. I just posted in the chat my direct email address along with my phone number as well. So feel free to use that. Give us any of those suggestions that you might have. And again, thank you. We really appreciate it. It's really kind of heartwarming to see a lot of return faces to these. It gives us the impression that these are effective or that people are enjoying them, that they're serving a purpose. So for those of you that are routine visitors on these, keep it up. Tell your other board members who maybe don't always attend. It'd be nice to see them. If you've got homeowners ever that for some of these topics might be beneficial for them to attend, feel free to share those invites with them as well. But with that, everyone, thank you again. We appreciate your time. Eris, huge thank you to you for going over everything at a nice pace, easy to digest, and appreciate your time and expertise here too.
Absolutely. Thank you. And A pleasure meeting everyone, and I hope everyone has a great rest of your day.